Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to this 8th session of OnCue Professional Development. OnCue Professional Development this year is funded by the Canadian Performing Arts Workers Resilience Fund and administered by Canadian Heritage. And this is one of 3 opportunities that we were able to provide using funds from that program. The other 2 being internships and another being mentorships for 10 different theater artists in each program. So we're very excited to be able to offer this programming this year, thanks to them and their partnership with us. Today's session, Breaking In, focuses on breaking into the, I guess, professional echelons, the more professional echelons of the performing arts industry. I don't really know how we want to define it. I think that's part of the discussion today. But so we are being joined by Jennifer Brewin, the artistic director of the Globe Theatre here in Regina, Heather Cant, the artistic director of Persephone Theatre in Saskatoon, and Leon Wiley, who is a professional actor, artist who has worked, I believe, with both theaters in the past. And they're going to do a little introduction of themselves. I am also going to repost their bios in chat for anyone who wants to look through the official ones. But I will turn over the meeting to the 3 of you to lead us through.
I don't think we decided who was going to start.
You're going first.
I just started. Maybe that's how it goes. Well, welcome everybody. And it's a pleasure to meet people in this room, and certainly a humbling idea to speak about my own work and how I got to be in this chair. And I'll speak to that a little bit. The afternoons, Heather and I and Leon agreed to it. I don't think we consulted with them. So lesson number 1 and how it goes. But we're going to take the first 40 minutes, and Leon and Heather and I are going to speak a little bit to our own work and how we got to where we are. We're going to speak to some, then for the next sort of section, we'll speak about what we've observed over the years about what might work or what doesn't work. We'll take a little break, then we'll come back for questions, and also have a moment for all of us to just have a little, go into breakout rooms and just have kind of conversations to hear about how you're all doing and what your experiences are, to share some of the things you've accomplished and the barriers you faced and things that have worked to go through that. And then we'll come back for some follow-up. So there'll be 2 breaks in the afternoon as we go through it. Probably if you could hold your questions to the question session or the end of our section, would be amazing. Or send them to Landon if they come up while we're talking. Otherwise, I'll probably read the questions as I'm talking, and I'm easily distracted. So again, thank you. So I'm gonna now, as I self-appointed hosting this, say maybe Heather or Leon. Heather, I'll volunteer you. Do you want to start and speak to your story? You're welcome to throw it back at me if you really would like to, if you'd rather I start. But
no, it's fine. You did a good job starting already, Jennifer. It's been interesting to think about this, this kind of breaking in. It really implies this like inside outside, people in a circle, people outside of a circle. And I think early in my career, I believed in that. And at this point in my career, I don't believe in that in quite the same way. And I think that it is a bit of a fallacy that we kind of perpetuate that doesn't necessarily serve us, and that there's some kind of, I suppose the thing I'm working on is like shifting my own mindset around what it means to belong to a community of artists, and what my path is as an artist in my career in order to be able to kind of like acknowledge and respect my own accomplishments. So I've been ruminating a lot on this because this will sound a bit wild, but there are lots of times where I still feel like 20-year-old Heather did, where I'm like, I'm not there. I haven't done enough. I don't know the right people. I haven't done X, Y, or Z, and that's a bit ridiculous because I sit in this chair. Like anybody outside of me would be like, no, that's not a thing, Heather. But I think the notion of breaking in can feel a lot of our own internal weight and expectations on ourselves. So when I thought about that in my own journey, I think, I started my career as an actor, and early on in my career, I knew that I wanted to do other things. I wanted to direct. I had a long-term ambition to be an artistic director. But the only thing that I knew how to do at that time was act. And I felt like I needed to learn a lot of skills in order to even be able to deign to approach other disciplines. And so I put a lot of my focus in that. When I graduated from theater school, I went to Gastown Actors Studio, which is no more, unfortunately. But when I graduated, I realized that I'd been taught a lot of skills and how to be an actor, but none of the knowledge about how to actually have a career. And that made it really hard to actually get anybody to hire you, because understanding the business side of the industry is very different than actually understanding skills, talent. So I started to really develop my own work. I started producing, basically, because getting an audition was hard. I was living in Vancouver, and I was like beating the pavement, knocking on doors, trying everything that was within my power to get myself seen and to get in the room and that sort of thing, and wasn't having a lot of success. So I started producing my own stuff, and that, I would say, was like the thing. Doing that was the thing that really put me on the path that I am on now. It gave me a lot more control over what kind of work I got to do, who I got to work with, and I didn't have to rely on somebody else to hire me. It was hard. I didn't have any idea what I was doing. I didn't own a computer. I knew nothing. And it was a lot of figuring it out as I went and getting advice. But it really I discovered that I actually love producing. I began to develop skill sets and recognition in the community with other artists who saw me for the work that I was doing. And right now, that is a thing that I see, in the communities that I have worked in. It's the same. It's a bit of the same MO, right? How do you break in? How do you get seen? If somebody isn't going to give you a chance? And that's how I did it. And I started to really step into that producing world a lot more. I stopped waiting tables and I started working theater administration so that I could spend more time in the industry. And a lot of my relationships that I've developed with my colleagues across the country really began when I started working on the other side, on the administration side. So then when I started to walk into audition rooms or to ask for meetings as a director, people took them because they knew who I was already through a different lens than having, like, I don't know, wowed them at some audition or something like that, where they like remember you years later. So that is I suppose, like, my journey in a nutshell has been like head down the double black diamond immediately, no time for the bunny hill, just kind of throw myself into really doing the work to create my own opportunities. That comes with a lot of, I guess I was doing that at a different time than there is right now. I'm pretty sure the internet existed. I just didn't have access to it. And now, the world is very different, and that information is much easier to come by. But now I kind of operate, I guess, in the same way. When I first started playwriting, I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I'd read a lot of plays, I'd been in a lot of plays, I directed some plays, but I had never written a play. just sat down and started to do that. And I think the advice that I got from someone that really resonated with me long term and in all of the hats that I wear, and that it came from Brian Quirt, who's an amazing dramaturg and runs Night Swimming Theatre in Toronto. I'd written this play and I was sitting next to Brian at a meal during the PACT conference, and told him I had written this play, but I was, nervous about sharing it and those sorts of things. And I didn't really consider myself a playwright. And he said, but you wrote a play. Yeah, you're talking to me about this play right now. Like, yes. So you are a playwright. And if you don't start to own those titles for yourself and own that identity for yourself and claim that space in the community, then it's very difficult to do this kind of breaking in thing. And I think that's where I really start to flip between this old ideal that I held when I was young around, these people who were like in the inner circle and me on the outside wanting to be there, and really just acknowledging that I am already part of the community. I am already an artist that does these things, and accepting and respecting my own work, and through that actually creating a platform through which other people will see you in the same way. Yeah.
Thanks, Heather. Are there any, like, what are your not regrets in it, but
I do have a regret.
Yeah. What is it?
Do you want to know my regret is?
Yeah.
Okay. So I happened to be living in Vancouver at a time when it became very fashionable to like not work for free, to that if you were to be a legitimate artist, you could only work for money. And I got a little swept up in that. I bought into it. And so I made these parameters for myself that actually meant that I stopped doing the things that were actually getting me noticed, that were building my skills, that were building relationships in my life and career. I stopped doing that because of this very stupid idea that somehow if you worked for free, you didn't respect yourself and you weren't a serious artist. And that's my regret, really, is that I did that, because it changed the pace at which my career was developing. It changed how frequently I met and made connections and that sort of thing. And not to say that my career would be any different now than it would have been had I continued to do that, but I would have had very different opportunities, I think, in hindsight, right? And that just, it was the tenor of the time in the community that I belonged to at the time, and now I think it's so silly. Work begets work, and you should do projects that you're passionate about. And if you want to do it, then whether or not you are monetarily compensated is irrelevant. If it's important to you and it's how you want to spend your time, then by all means have at her. It does not invalidate the work for there not to be a financial compensation.
Lots of ideas in that, Heather. Leon, thank you, Heather. So interesting.
Well, hello. Yeah, that was really fascinating. I myself also grew up in Vancouver first. I've been doing this since 1990, actually. And when I started, I really had no idea. I enjoyed the idea of storytelling. I really enjoyed what it was when I was listening to stories. So I was always attracted to a certain sense of either performing art or storytelling of any kind. So I started in West Vancouver, and I didn't know anything. I had no idea what it was to be an artist, how to get into any kind of position. And at the time, there was not a lot of, I was in a school that basically wanted me to either be an engineer or a scientist or a doctor or something else. And so when I went to my guidance counselor and I said, listen, I think I want to be an actor. I just don't know where to go. Can you help me? They just said, no, I can't. That was it. And so I was kind of left to my own devices. But I basically, I had two things going for me. I didn't know any better. And I always said yes. And so I just kept saying yes to all these projects. And I allowed influences to come into my life. I had girlfriends and best friends who would say, hey, listen, you know, you sing all the time. Why don't you audition? Why don't you go to this thing? They said they're auditioning for something. And I said, okay. And I went in and I tried to do my best and I would pick a song. And at any rate, well, once I started to work in amateur theater first. I did lots of amateur theater. Amateur theater was fantastic because not only did it prove to me that what I was doing was really valid and fulfilling, but it was also just really fun. And I enjoyed it so much. And it kept just fostering this deep respect and love that I have for the craft. And I just kept going. And then one day someone said, well, you know, would you like to do these other kind of strange tangential projects? Like, would you like to be a character at the P&E? Would you like to be, you know, would you like to be have you ever been a model before? Would you like to dress up in this crazy outfit and we'll pay you a few $100s to do that? And I just kept saying yes to every single thing that I was put in front of me. And now eventually, once I started to accomplish enough, I had a bit of a resume because I remember going to, I would go to a piece of theater at a big theater company, you know, like the Arts Club Theater in Vancouver, and I had no idea how to go because at that time, obviously the internet wasn't alive, it didn't exist, and so I would just go and I would ask like the box office manager how to audition, and they would look at me like, well, how am I supposed to know? And no one would help me, and so eventually I just got sort of stupid and brave, which I loved, and I just kept phoning the random people. I would just look them up in the yellow pages. And I would phone whomever I could talk to and say, hi, my name's Leon. I want to audition for a show. Can I audition for the show? And they go, no, you're talking to the wrong person. And eventually I got to the right person to talk to. Then the thing about having a slight sense of guile is that I would send in my things, and a lot like Heather was saying about sort of running the hamster wheel and trying my best and trying to figure out, once I started to kind of maneuver and go, okay, I should know these people. There's the casting director. Okay, now I think I figured some of the things out. I would present my things and it would be a general, I'd go, okay, here's my resume and photo. And I would have these sort of amateur things and I'd put my high school resume, like whatever I could to do. And a terrible picture, which were so much fun to do. And then I would arrive and they'd say, no. Well, I started to realize that there's a lot of no's. There's a lot of no's. No's are forever. And so I stopped taking them personally because I realized that a no is a no because I'm too short, I'm too tall, I'm too male, I'm not male enough. I don't know. There's lots of whatever the thing is, I have no control over. There's a few aspects that I do have control over. So once you get me in the room, hopefully I will go in and kick ass and do my best, at least what I think is my best. And then that's kind of all I have the power to do. And so I started to realize this, and then I started to realize, because I started to understand the business itself, and that if there's 10 slots available, there's always going to be someone that's not going to show up. And there's always going to be someone that has another reason why they can't be there. And it's all logical and all legitimate. So if I'm not doing anything that day, I might as well sit in the lobby. And if there's a space, then I'll say, well, I'm ready right now. Can I go in? And so I would crash a lot of auditions. And then it was the only way at that time that, even though I got a few shows because of that, I didn't get a lot of them, but I got a few. But the number one thing I did get was I got to know, and all of those people got to know me, because I would come in and they would say, oh, hello, Leon, how are you doing? How's it going today? You know, and I would audition and say, thank you very much. Well, you're not really, thank you very much. You know, and I would leave. So, but eventually I started to have this as a habit. And eventually I started to get paid for little things. And then the number one thing that I found was my strength was that I had to have enough courage just to show up and try. And then once I'm in the room and I'm in the show, then I would endeavor to show them why they hired me, not as a way to prove myself, but more because I really do genuinely love the work. And so my strength then becomes my work ethic and what it is that I do. And I always want to get better, and I always want to, and I don't mind making mistakes, and I don't mind fumbling on my face and doing a terrible thing. I don't mind that. That doesn't matter as long as I'm still working, because then I started to get a reputation that was positive, one that would say, well, yeah, you know, he's getting better, or yeah, no, I really like working with him, or, oh, I love working with that guy. Yeah, it's so fun because he brings such, he loves it, right? And he's so funny and he brings such warmth to the process or whatever. So after a while, all of those things started to whisper in the ears of other directors and artistic directors across Canada. And so when I would audition, they would have heard my name. and I hadn't ever worked with them, and I'd walk in, they'd say, oh yeah, no, I've heard about you. Weren't you in this production and this production? I'd say, yes. And they'd say, okay, great. Let me see what you did. And I would go and I would do my thing, and I'd either be great or pretty good or okay, or whatever it was. But then it would leave at least I would always endeavor to be just genuinely myself in the room. And so at the end of the day, if I can leave that room, that auditioning space, and go, well, I was honest. I did my best in that moment, and now I'm moving on with the rest of my life. If I can do those things, then I either get the show or I don't. And I started to relax a lot more around the pressure of what it was to either prove myself or to be in a situation where I needed the job or I needed the work. So at any rate, so in my life, I think the largest influence for me was the fact that I had the courage to just try anyway, even if maybe I had a lot of no's, because I really had a lot of no's. I still have a lot of no's, lots of them. Yeah, they're ubiquitous. It's all good.
The other thing that you haven't factored in though yet, Leon,
yeah.
and I say this as somebody who has worked with Leon, like, I don't know, at least a dozen times probably, is that once you begin working with organizations and you start walking into the room and they're like, oh yeah, that guy, is that people start to plan for you in their seasons. They start to program show. They go, oh, what could we should do? I want to have Leon back. What should we do that we can put Leon in? And then they will choose a show with you in mind.
Yeah.
And then, sometimes you might still have to audition for it because they're not totally sure, right?
Yeah.
But they were thinking about you when they programmed the show.
Yeah.
Or the offer just comes straight out, right? Because you've been building those relationships with these organizations for so long.
Yes. Well, and I find that I never want to be in a position where I take any of those things for granted, because I've been in situations where I've been extremely fortunate. I walk in, or I don't walk in at all. I literally get a phone call and says, hey, we're doing this show. Would you like to do this show? Yes. But I've also been in situations where I've known the person for a decade and they know my work backwards and forwards, and they go, hi, what are you doing? So next Monday, we're going to have an audition. It'd be great if you came in. Could you do this? And it's the full straight, 5-6 pages of sides and 2 scenes. And can you have this done? And are you ready? And you prepare and and it's the same thing. And I either get it or I don't get it. And so, yeah, exactly. There's a sense, I think, from artists that if they, there's a sense of it sometimes is not fair. And there's a sense of it being that once you're at a place, you can kind of coast. And then neither of those are really true. Because you can't really. It's something that I'm constantly wanting to work and wanting to be better at. And the other thing I would say is that, I've worked in my life. I've worked with some very great people, and I've also worked with really terrible people, and they can be quite damaging, the terrible people. And so it helps if you have a little bit of a distance from their opinion of your work. Only because when I was growing up, it very much was, as Heather was saying at the beginning, there was a circle that you wanted to get in, and anyone that was in the circle was in the circle, and people are outside of the circle, and there was a really us and them kind of thing. And then I would run into directors or artistic directors and what have you, that I would go into an audition, or even once I am hired, I'm in the room and we're rehearsing, and they would have this, excuse me, but my direction is very important. And you, as the lowly plebeian actor, should really pay attention to my brilliance, because if you don't take my direction perfectly, then you are an idiot. And you should cease being such a despicable human being. And it was very odd. It was a very I am important and you are not important. Now, luckily,
can I just jump in, because we've got about 10 minutes before we take the next break, and both have brought up really a lot of food for thought that probably people want to get into and ask questions about.
But we want to hear about you.
Yeah,
sure?
we want to hear about you.
We're not moving on yet, Jennifer.
Yeah. Damn it.
We got to hear about your break-in story.
Yeah. I want attention, and then I'm bitter about not getting it. That's my so
shining the spotlight. So tell us how you got started, because
yeah.
you have a very different, I feel like in the conversations you and I've had, you have a very different path, right? Where Leon and I both started as actors. Leon is still an actor. I have accumulated other hats, but you didn't start that way.
No, so I was a terrible actor, and when I was an actor, I thought I had one professional gig at the Thousand Islands Playhouse, and I thought about my lunch while the scene was going on. Literally, I was oh, I could get coleslaw. So I knew that wasn't going to be my scene. So I got a Bachelor of Arts degree. That was my training, and the advantage of that, it was a drama program. We read a lot of plays. We wrote a lot of essays. So that had a different kind of value and influence back in the day. So I didn't train. We did everything though. I mean, we were actors. We were stage managers. You painted a set. You designed stuff. It would that's what the BA program can do for you. And I left and was a terrible waiter. And I thought, because I wasn't an actor, I needed to, it dawned on me swiftly, and I went straight to Toronto. And so I was in a bar with a friend, and I met another person who worked at Necessary Angel Theatre, and she had a employment grant for youth, and my friend Sarah was finishing that position and said, Jennifer, why don't you take over from me? And that was at Necessary Angel, through Necessary Angel. So I was an administrative assistant, badly photocopying, losing files, submitting grants, forgetting the address where the place where the grant was due, trying to get across town to get there on time. I met 2 women, Leah Cherniak and Martha Ross, who did physical theater, had just come from Lecoq, and they were making a play as part of Necessary Angels. I I bring that up because they remain my friends, they remain my mentors, they shaped everything that I believed about theater. So they got a grant at that time. They were, some of you may remember this, what were they, Ontario grants, and they were for arts administration, and it was $15,000 a year, which was basically my income until 3 years ago. Has been my income my whole life, except for 3 years ago. So so I worked with Leah Cherniak and Martha Ross, and they made physical theater, and they came from Lecoq. They didn't use the red nose, but it was just wild. And we were out of the Poor Alex, which was Crow's Theater, and Native Earth was starting up, Buddies in Bad Times was starting up. There was, so the Canadian playwright had moved into this next level of creation. So I didn't really know I was part of a bustling scene, which I also say we're all part of bustling scenes. We may not even know it, but we probably, because all of a sudden, in retrospect, you go, oh frig, I was part of there was no circle. Like when you get in the circle, you go, no, there are assholes and there aren't assholes, but it's so fluid. And as we know, that circle can change instantly for lots of reasons. So I learned a lot about arts leadership and management through these Theatre Smith Gilmore, Crow's Theatre, and Theatre Columbus at the time. We've changed the name to Common Boots, and we ran the Poor Alex Theatre. And I did that for a long time. Again, through another, so I was an administrator, producer type person. I call it administrator, that's what we called it in those days. But I got more and more closer to the rehearsal room. So I would just start to take my work. We didn't have laptops then, and we did everything by Letraset, but I would just start working out of the rehearsal space. And in that rehearsal space were, some of you from Ontario will know this, but Diego Matamoros and Oliver Dennis and Kevin Bundy and Maggie Huchelak, and like they were all making plays, and they were all part of the indie scene. They weren't the established either, and they were all making plays. And I just started to hang out in that room more and more until finally I got to be an assistant director because I took notes. That's it. I started typing up, and I was a terrible typer. The collective creations, I would type the scenes as they go, like madly type them, or I'd videotape them and transcribe them. And then that just got me closer to the room. And then I got a call from Factory Theatre, and George Walker was creating a new play, and I loved his work. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to go do that. And I hung out with George for a long time, and learned a lot about new plays from him. He's a playwright, and I loved his work and his sense of politics. And then at the same time, the Blythe Festival was happening, and someone said, you should take a look at that because it's new works in a rural community, and everybody knows these playwrights. And it's a place where the audience and the artists are like, have this big dialogue with each other. And they're, you walk, and some of you will know Blythe Festival too, or there's the equivalent of it here. You go down the street, and the person in the grocery store says, I saw that play and I freaking hated it. Then I saw it again, I still hated it, but I think I understand why. Like, you're just talking to everybody, which you didn't get in Toronto. So I think that just that combination of the playwright George Walker and physical theater and Huron County all really informed choices that I made after that. And I would say that I wasn't ever the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I was wily, and I found grants to get people to hire me to do the job. And I just hung around the room and hung around with people, really interesting people who, sometimes I think it's like the Israeli army a little bit, like you make friends for life from what you do in those early days. So I was, but I would say this, that I hung around and was really close to freelance artists. I worked in theater companies that people weren't trying to necessarily get into. We were so independent, we did 1 or 2 shows. So I was in this really weird hybrid place of working with freelance artists. We would be one of the shows they would do in the year, but we weren't hiring everybody all year round. So people weren't necessarily knocking on our doors to get in. And then I went to the Caravan Farm Theater. Again, that was an accident. I invented the role of the production manager. They'd never had one before. I'd never been one before. And that there are many stories for the bar about that, as we all have many stories of those early years. But I could do a place with horses and livestock and talking sticks that people fought over. just a pause there. Anyway,
what I'm hearing from all of us really, Jennifer and Leon, is like the breaking in is actually just persistence. It's the stamina to stay, which, you know, comes with an immense amount of privilege as well, right? Like it's not possible sometimes for people to do that because of financial reasons or family obligations or things like that. But lots of people also go and come back. But the longer you just like Velcro yourself to someone or something or an organization and just like just grow there. And
I would
really,
add that
that's it.
Yeah, I would add like that. My favorite quote, I remember I ran into this woman who over dinner once, and she was French Canadian. She turned out she was living in Toronto. She was on the Supreme Court of Ontario. And I said, how? And she said, yeah, I just learned English like 3 years before. And I said, how did you do that? She said, well, I just followed my nose. I was interested in this and I was interested in that. And I wound up here and then there. And it was Louise Arbour who wound up being head of the Human Rights Commission in Yugoslavia. And she just kept being interested in something and following that. And I would say that helped, right? Like we haven't talked about vocation here and the kind of art that is important to us and the kind of relationships that are important to us. So I have not, like we'll take a break now. So I'm speaking very much from the freelance position. I'm now in a position, as Heather is, to then start to say, well, how does that information open up doors and opportunities for people what are our responsibilities as artistic leaders to make sure those opportunities are available to the creative forces that we live amongst. So
that's what we'll talk about after the break, is the one piece of advice we have as succinctly as possible, and dive into some questions too.
Let's open up for questions. Because there's a lot of people with a lot of experience in this room, so I'd love to hear from them.
Okay, perfect.
Great.
So
we take a 10-minute break then, Landon?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Refill your tea, use the loo, pet your cat.
See everyone in 10 minutes.
How are you up there in Saskatoon?
I'm well.
That's good.
I'm okay. Yeah. Busy.
Yeah. How's your small animal?
She's so good. You want to see her? Come here. Come here, babe.
Yes, I do.
Oh my gosh, she's so cute.
Look at it. So
she's been pretty good today. Just sitting on the sofa. Yeah.
You can find her on Instagram at.
Yeah. She has like Chekhovian levels of ennui, this dog. I've never seen anything like it. You would think that she lives, in the most put upon times that the earth has ever known.
Yes, of course. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
She's cursed with the knowledge that to live is an experience.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, she sits on the sofa in my office and like stares out the window and sighs. Like doesn't play with her toys or anything like that. She just like sits and stares. She is a people dog. She's not very satisfied unless she's surrounded by people.
I can see that actually. I can imagine that face be like a Cooper painting, like just one lone dog staring outside.
Yeah.
Longing for something, anything.
Are we back?
We still have 1 minute.
1 minute.
Yeah.
Okay, does everyone good questions?
Everyone can feel free to turn your camera on, ask your questions once they're back in, or put it in chat if you're more comfortable with that.
Some of you may know the great stage manager, Sandy Plunkett, who's here now, and he coined the phrase, any questions, queries, or unusual theories. So anything,
Nice.
bring it on.
The matinee is getting ready to start downstairs, and there is a tannoy in my office, and I think I have managed to turn it off, but we're going to find out in 7 minutes. So if you see me jump off to run off screen, it's because I'm trying to figure out how to turn off the tannoy in my office.
Great.
Also, Jennifer, in
yeah.
fairness, Heather said that we were going to start with your one succinct piece of advice on how to get in, and then questions.
Okay.
Because we didn't fit it in the first portion, we should start with that.
Like I see this gang here, and there's various, entries into the work. So there's no one size fits all. But, I think over the last few years, as we talk about how rehearsal rooms work and how work and more understanding that relationship is such an integral part of creativity, that the more we are able to articulate what we can offer a room and what we need from a room, what that room or what that process will give to us, how it will feed us. For me, for sure, particularly with young people, it really helps a lot if they know what we're doing or what I'm interested in, and can speak to how it might counter what I'm doing and offer a different way of working. And I'm talking sort of about directors and writers, but I would certainly say putting a team together of actors, it's, as Leon described, it's a whole Rubik's Cube of considerations. And the best we can articulate is good, but sometimes we're not good at it. Lots of times we're not good at it. The institution isn't good at it. But for sure, for young people, I would say, find out the work that you like, know who Canadian artists are, and find out what we're doing and help us make the link between what you're into and what we're into. Jennifer out, as it were.
My universal, I think this applies regardless of discipline. The most important thing that you can understand at any stage in your career is that everything in this industry is built on relationships. You cannot even conceive of how long the relationships that you have right now, or that you haven't even begun yet, are going to permeate your life. Mm-hmm. The people that I have began relationships with 20 years ago, you're in theater school, you meet those people, or you meet someone at an audition, or you do a show, that director, that playwright, somebody that, gets on your bad side, like, they're not going away. This industry is such that all of those relationships are for the long haul, and you can't even imagine how the ways in which those are going to intertwine. And so I think it's really important to invest in them and treat them with the knowledge that they are long-term relationships. They're never transactional and they're never temporary. Since I sat in this chair, it's been a year and a half now, sometimes I get emails from someone, that 20-year-old Heather, who was, in theater school, would have had kittens over. The fact that they just casually email me now, it blows my mind. I couldn't have conceived of that when I was just starting my career, but that is the way that this industry works. So never treat anyone as disposable or transactional, and really just like invest in those relationships, because you can't know.
I would say that's fantastic. I would say endeavor to be as diversified as you possibly can in everything you do. So foster all the different aspects of all the different interests that you have. Theater as a large art form, it encompasses so many things. And so I think one of the most important things for sure is to really attempt and try all different kinds of theater, all different kinds of that art form, so that you can foster the longevity that you need to sustain a career in the arts. So you're not just a classical theater artist, you're also a musical theater artist and an indie theater artist and a French Canadian artist. And, you can practice all different kinds of disciplines within the same art form. You can also go into different side things like film or creation, collective creation, solo creation. I think that's a real key for me. And the other thing too is just be eminently curious, consistently, constantly curious, and always, always, always try to say yes to as many things as you can. I mean, within the privilege of your life and your ability, obviously. That's what I would say.
There's an article out there. I wish I could find it. I'll see if I can post it on Facebook if I can find it. Somebody sent it to me about how lousy it is to be an artist, and it's an easy subject, right? Like we can throw that, like because I was thinking about how do you not be bitter in this work. But it was out of Los Angeles. I think it was Los Angeles Times, and it was speaking about all kinds of artists, and they did a study of what artists make, visual artists, theater artists. And one of the lousy parts of working in the arts is how lousy the feedback loops are. You spoke about this, Leon, about the no's. And we don't get a grant, that's a no. We don't get a job, that's a no. So you never really understand where you're at with it. And I think that's an issue in our work that's really tough to overcome. So do people have questions? And if you want to put a question, you can send it to Landon if you want to send an anonymous question, Ken McLeod.
Or just raise your hand too if you want to ask verbally. That's cool. Like,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
let's open the floor.
You're
to
totally
chat.
free to turn on cameras and ask, or you can send them in the chat, either directly to me or just generally.
Yeah.
That's interesting what you were saying about feedback. It is quite a tough thing. You walk into a room and you give your audition and there isn't time to give particular feedback to say, okay, well, the reason I'm not going to hire you today is, and it's like,
but how can you even listen to that? Like, you don't even know if that person's right or wrong.
Totally.
Like,
Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah. That's what I try to say too. I'm like, well, that person in that moment you may not be right for that one moment, but that exact same thing in another room would say, yeah, that's great.
You can always ask.
Yeah.
You can always ask. You don't always get in it. I feel like, and Jennifer, you and I have talked about this before. We were very, it's hard because the work that we do in this industry is so vulnerable and it is so connected to our identity as a person that it can be really hard to hear criticism. And when you're in a position to make these kinds of decisions that affect people's livelihoods, it can be a really tenuous place when someone asks you for feedback, because you can, derail someone or hurt their feelings when you're not trying to. So people get nervous about even sharing, right? But then we end up in this very closed feedback loop where nobody really understands the whys of I think I'm thinking in
a larger, like as one crafts their trajectory, how you find your path through it as a freelancer. But I'm just wondering about the room, what your experience has been like, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and if you have anything you want to share with us, and maybe there's a question in it or not, but I'm curious what people's experiences are. I see playwrights and actors in the room, and
take the mic.
Yeah.
Carmen, you have raised your hand.
I have. I am probably the least experienced person in this room, so I'm just going to be out there and say, if you are somebody who is already in another career path, is a little older in your life, and you've never done any work in a professional theater, is there any way to is there any way to start building those relationships and get an opportunity to be like, is it, I guess it's too late. Is it too late for me to try?
Never too late.
Even if it's not professional theater, but I mean, to do something. Is there any
Never too late.
It's a great question. I'm looking at Ken McLeod. Ken, you're running a theater company in Saskatoon. Is that right? That's a lot of amateur artists work for that with a lot of experience.
Yeah, I do. Carmen, where are you at? You in Regina? You in Saskatoon?
I'm in Regina. Yeah.
Regina. Do you know Regina Little Theater?
I do. Yeah.
I mean, that's a great place that I know quite a few people that have got to start there and even transitioned into. Well, Amy's there all the time.
Yeah,
That's great. It's great.
And it is. I mean, it's one of the longest running community theaters in the Commonwealth. So they have a great history, and they continually adapt and bring in new memberships so that it isn't just the same. I feel like there's very little gatekeeping in that community. That it is always trying to bring more people in and give them opportunities to direct, to be on stage. And so in Regina, that's generally where I always sent my students and people that, maybe they were, I call it avocational theater. Maybe it's not your job, but it's a thing you really are passionate about. It's a really great place to go.
Okay. Yes, because I did community, like we lived up in La Ronge for a long time, and I did some community theater there. Just like the local theater group and a couple of productions of the Vagina monologues and so forth, and then so I was done did like the amateur theater, and then I had a child, and so she became the focus, and then her artistic ambitions became the focus of our efforts, and then last fall I decided, I'll sign up for the Globe's adult acting class, and
that's great.
And I rediscovered that passion, and I felt like there was maybe something that I could try there, but it's like we're like, I mean, and because we haven't been in Regina that long, we were overseas for a couple of years. I'm not in on any of the circles. So it's like, how do I even get a chance?
Well, I think building knowledge too, Carmen, is like following like getting to know who's doing it. And I've never been one for schmoozing. I had like 5 friends who were artistic directors and they never hired me, and it didn't occur to me. So like schmoozing's never, like, it doesn't work. Like, I don't even know what that is. But for sure, getting to know some of the amazing actors in town, following their work, some of the writers, checking out, there's play readings that Mary Blackstone is running and looking for people for that all the time. So there's funny little things, and that's where you start to realize you are the circle. And I would say what drew me to this province was this hybrid of amateur, professional, community. Like that's always been part of the DNA of the work that I've done, and I've been so attracted to that here. So I think there's opportunities for that to continue, and the parameters aren't so tight. And as you say, like Amy's done that a lot. There's Kelly Jo Burke. And hi. Kelly's
the first step you've done here, Carmen, is to be here.
Yeah.
Right, is to meet everybody in this room and start to build those relationships that can help give you opportunities of knowledge and entry point into the community that you want to be a part of.
And it really is interesting, because with Regina Little Theater, you really can quite literally look them up and talk to them directly. and they are really quite open. Actually, they're really friendly, super kind. You know, they're always looking for anything from volunteers to being a part of an actual production. So that's always a fun way also to meet people, because you can go in, and if you have the time or the means, you can go in and volunteer for a production and meet literally almost everyone involved. And that's another great way of sort of cracking that shell.
Awesome.
I say, if you see something too from just like an organization you like, you can also just call whoever up, the secretary or whoever, and say, do you have volunteer opportunities? I would love to just be in the know, because once you start getting into that circle, other opportunities within that circle also usually come to the forefront.
Okay.
And I would sure say, for my part, if anyone emails me and I don't email them back, just email again. It's the worst. But it's also your job. Like, as a freelance artist, it's your job. You are it's our job to listen to freelance artists and to understand what they're doing and to meet them. And we fail all the time at it as artistic directors. But it's our gig, and it's your gig to present yourself and tell us who you are in whatever capacity works the best for you. And that's our job, is to listen. So if we don't email back, it's just because we're self-absorbed with our to-do list.
Everybody, well, that's not like, no, I disagree. I will say I always email back, but sometimes it takes me a while to get to that email. That's all. I will always email back.
But I also want to respect that everybody has a busy life. Mine is not more important than anybody else. Like, we all have busy lives, whether we're taking care of family or we're working. So probably that's all I'd ask, is like, just, and write again if it's pressing, and just it's registered there.
And I think the important thing there is to take away, like, I go on a lot of coffees. I meet a lot of people come into my inbox to be like, hey, I'm new in town, I'm an actor, when are you doing generals? Oh, I missed them, can we have a coffee and meet? Like, or playwrights or directors. Like, I take lots of meetings on Zoom or in person, because it's my responsibility, like Jennifer said, to know the community here, to know who is who and who does what and who's interested in what. And I'm always looking to know, like, what everyone's bucket list show is. If there's a way for, if that's a thing that I'm planning on programming, or an idea that you put in my mind or whatever, that's kind of our job. But I also want to acknowledge that, like, these jobs are very big and they don't fit in 40-hour work weeks, and we do our best in a communication way. Because I know, certainly in my own career, I have emailed so many artistic directors in my life and never gotten a response. And it used to really irk me, because I hadn't been an artistic director of a large regional theater before. And now I'm like, they're busy. It's not that they didn't read it, or that they hate me, or they don't think I'm talented. It's just that it's really hard to stay on top of. And sometimes, like when I was directing The Fiancé, if you did not work at Persephone, you did not get an email response from me for quite some time, because I had to prioritize, because I was in rehearsals all day, the people in this organization who rely on me in order to do their work. I just didn't have space in the day to respond to anyone else. I did eventually, but it was like, the end of January.
So in terms of, like, I mean, you're building relationships, but how do you, like, I mean, like, for example, I mean, there's a wonderful group of people here. I have no idea how to reach any of you outside of, except for Jennifer, and know where to find Leon. But I'm just wondering, like, is there, like, do you, like, with this kind of a thing, would you, like, create like a contact list, or, like, I don't know, like, I'd love to, be able to.
This is why we're going to have a breakout session, so you guys can all talk and get to know each other a little bit and see who's interested in what.
There's also the Saskatchewan Association of Theatre Professionals, which you can look up.
I signed up for the green room thing. So
and that's one place where people are starting to gather.
And the other thing I would say is that for anyone who works for an org, so like me, Mary, Jennifer, Heather, like, we have public emails that are on the org websites. So Heather's is on Persephone, mine is on Q's. So that's always, like, there's always that connection as well.
And most professional actors have their own websites. You can just Google us.
Yeah.
And there's a contact link on our homepages typically.
Right.
So
Like Kelly Jo Burke is an amazing playwright and has written plays. I knew about Kelly Jo before I got here. Mary Blackstone has a long connection to a lot of playwrights. Getting to know who our playwrights are is that's a big deal for me. Like if you come in and if I said to you, who are your favorite playwrights? And you said Kelly Jo Burke and Amory McDonald and Jennifer Brewin. I go, but getting to know those playwrights and who are your favorite plays and who are you, like that just helps so much understand, those are great to know and to ask me, well, what are your favorite things? And I like comedy. I think the world is crappy and I think it's a way to get into the world. So I can't only do comedy because I think the world needs and the community needs different ways of storytelling. Mine isn't the only perspective. So are we taking a break now? I can't remember.
You
About
had
10 minutes.
Yeah,
Sure.
you had a break at 2:20 on your schedule, Jennifer.
There's also the Theater Artists Hub of Regina on Facebook, which is a great group to be part of.
Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate all these insights.
You got a
Anyone
team
else
on
have
your Sherman.
some questions?
Holy-
Paulina, I see your hand.
Awesome. Hi, I was just wondering, so you mentioned getting feedback, and how do you ask for that for, say, like after an audition or something, just because it's nice to know kind of how to improve and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, occasionally you'll encounter somebody who might give you feedback in the room, but I would say that's pretty rare. I would send a note afterward. Like it's very difficult to ask in the room because it kind of puts someone on the spot. But I would broach it as a subject to say, hey, a follow-up email that's like, hey, it was really great to meet you or to audition for you, or I am really interested in feedback because as I grow as an artist, and if you have anything to share with me, I'd be really open to receiving it. Totally understand if you don't want to do that, because sometimes people are not comfortable, right? They are worried about whatever can of worms their feedback might open up, either for you or for them. But it never hurts to ask. I would just ask in a manner that allows them to not be a bad person if they don't if they choose not to answer.
And sometimes it's better to ask the person who's booking the auditions rather than the AD or the director, because that person is the person whose your name appeared on their list and they reached out to you or you found out about them and got in touch with them. So you want them to know you, and you want them to know that you care about doing a better job next time. And they're in a position, because they're in the room, but they're not necessarily weighing in on the casting, to give a collective summary of what was said in the room without anyone having to say, well, she liked it, but she didn't, kind of, which can be very uncomfortable for everybody. But a casting director or a casting associate will have that information and will be able to share it in a fairly dispassionate way. But it also gets you on their list as someone who goes the an extra mile to try to get better.
Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions? We have about 4 minutes still before the next scheduled break. Or comments.
Who had something that you were just burning to know when you know why you signed up here? What was the thing that you were really hoping we were going to reveal?
That's right.
Could I
just the door code?
Could I just ask a question that people may already know the answer to, but might not? And that is, when do you have auditions? What are the formally set up opportunities for people to get a toe in the door?
Well, I mean, last year, Jennifer and I did 7 days of general auditions between Regina and Saskatoon. We saw so many people, not just auditions, but also artistic introductions with designers and directors. It was great, really helpful to getting to know the community here. This year, Persephone is going to be doing our general auditions in Winnipeg because I want to get to know that community. I would say like our generals will generally always be in the spring, probably kind of the March, April timeline usually. And then we do show specific auditions after that.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, at the Globe, as some of you may know, COVID set everything in a weird place, and then we don't have a building. And so that combination has made some of our programming has specific requirements, but it's a requirement of every major theater companies that are part of the Professional Association of Canadian Theaters and who work with Actors Equity Association, that we do general auditions every year. So, and we can do them in different parts of the country. So that's why Persephone is like, well, we saw everybody this year. We don't want to make everyone come back again. There'll be some people who missed it, of course. So we have to get back on schedule so people know when that's going to be. And again, we'll be doing general auditions probably in the spring, hopefully in the spring again. And then we'll be doing show specific auditions. And is there a listing? I don't know this because I know everyone refers to it, but actors might. Where's the listing that posts where actor jobs come up? Leon and
the E-Drive.
That's the Equity E-Drive.
Yes, it's the E-Drive. If you're a member of the Equity Association, then yes, you'll have that automatically come.
You don't have to be
You
a
do
member
not have to
sign
be a
up for the
member.
E-Drive.
Oh, fantastic!
No.
See, I didn't even know
Anybody
that.
can sign up for
You
the
might get it
E-Drive.
automatically if you're a member, but anyone
Yeah.
can just go to the Equity site and sign up for the E-Drive.
And that's the universal place that because we have requirements under our obligations to that organization as producers, that's where everybody's putting their auditions. So I would heartily recommend if you are an actor or a director or stage manager or whatever your discipline, sign up for the E-Drive. And you'll get it's also really just helpful to get to know all of the companies across Canada and what everyone's doing and who is going to be at those auditions. Even if you don't go, it just offers you a lot of insight into like what's being programmed, who's being hired. Like right now, you just see so many stage management postings coming out, and it just tells you like it's just really hard right now to hire a stage manager in this country. There's a lot of information embedded in it, even if it's not a posting that might apply to you specifically.
So where do you find where do you sign up for this list?
I'm just posting it in chat right away.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
In another area, either you want to take this maybe after the break or whatever, but from the standpoint of a playwright, it would be helpful to talk about how does the playwright get some attention for their work and an opportunity to get their work performed.
Thank you. Can we hold that for Landon? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I had a couple things. Number one was just so everyone knows, I posted the link in chat. The Equity site is a little weirdly set up. So there's the information is in the white section. To actually subscribe to the newsletter, it's a purple button along the right-hand side that does not look like it's part of the same page, but that is the correct button to subscribe for the E-Drive. The other thing that I was just going to note for anyone who is based in Regina or Saskatoon is that Jaron Francis is organizing some community general auditions as well between the two cities that will be happening in late spring, hopefully.
Great. Mary, can we come back to that because it's a big question? But Amy and Pamela, do you want to go in that order? You had your hands up.
Oh, you're on mute.
You're on.
All right, is it working now?
Yeah.
Okay,
it's working now, Amy.
My new microphone, I have to like unplug it all the time. But anyways, you're just talking about general auditions, and being based in Saskatchewan, I find it really hard applying to auditions in like Alberta and Winnipeg because I get the response that they're only seeing local people, and then I'll see them bring in people from Toronto. So I just find it really hard being based in Saskatchewan and trying to even being seen outside of the province.
That I think has a lot to do with just like investing in the relationships, is keep showing up. I you know, I'm originally from Saskatchewan, but I was living in BC and I lived there for like 30 years, but I really wanted to work for Shakespeare on the Saskatchewan. So every year I'd be like, I am a Saskatchewan person, please hire me. And I would ask to send a tape and they would usually say, yes, that's fine, you can send a tape. And I would never get hired. But then one day I did. Just persistence. The request for tapes, I would say, is a really high volume because it just makes everything so much more accessible for actors. So all you can do is ask. And for generals, generally the answer is going to be no, because if we accepted tapes for generals, like we would just spend the rest of our lives watching tapes. But for show specific auditions, you'll probably have a much higher success rate in terms of that ask, unless they really are committed to like local only.
Is there like a tax reason and stuff? Because usually when I apply in Winnipeg, I do have family there who would let me stay, but I still get the like, no, we're only looking at local people.
No tax reasons. No,
Okay.
it is really just about like, we're charitable organizations. We don't file taxes and quite like that. It just doesn't matter.
Okay.
But it's usually about them trying to fulfill a mandate or to hire local people. Because that's a commitment to the community. If you don't hire them, they move away, and then there is no local community. So, you know, and I, you know, frankly, sometimes that's just what people say.
Yeah.
But they are, you know, that they will be wanting to serve their memberships in their community. So that's partly there too. Well, we can come back to that too. Pamela, did you want
to? Since you guys brought up community theater before, I just kind of wanted to touch base on an interest in that. Would you recommend, or would you feel it would be more helpful or hurtful to be including community theater experience on resumes when applying for whether it's auditions, grants, what have you? Because as personal experience, I've actually been rejected because I was told that I had more community experience than professional, and that was like looked down on. So I'm curious what your guys' take on it is.
I would jump in for one thing. I think it depends on who you're going to. What I will say that I do know is that when I worked with our theater makers who had only worked in community theater, it was a pretty big transition to go from rehearsing for 3 months or 4 months over a show to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's a different muscle. So speaking to that different muscle, as you know, is partly what happened. Like I know I go, if you only did community theater, it's going to be, you could have a hard time in the rehearsal room. That's like, you have to go home and you have to do that work that night. So speaking to that, that's one of the things that, like, just personally, I flag about it, because I know it was really tough on a couple of people I worked with, and they didn't have fun.
I should clarify, it wasn't only community theater. It was just more community theater than professional. So,
I mean, my perspective really on that is I've always included it on my resume. I'm still here all these decades later. The reality is most of the time, nobody knows what's what, right? They're like, I haven't heard of that organization. It doesn't mean it's not a legitimate organization. And particularly when you begin to audition for outside of the province, like, or outside of the city that you live in, where everybody knows everything about everybody else, they don't know. They're looking at it and looking for things that they recognize, shows they recognize, directors they recognize.
But material, and that's valuable, right?
Yeah, so to say, oh, you played a lead in this musical. I know that musical. I know that part. I know what's required of that. So I might ask you if I've never heard of the organization. I might ask you, and you might say, oh, well, it was, a community theater organization, and then based on your audition, I might make some inferences about that, but everybody starts somewhere. If you can't put community theater on your resume, like nobody just walks in and just gets a professional job right out of the gate. Like that's just not how the industry works. So I think it's, in my opinion, it is silly to not be able to include community theater. You're still doing the work, but as Jennifer said, it's like, it is a bit of a different muscle. But what you could do if you're getting a lot of pushback is to separate them so that you have acting professional credits, acting community credits, and they're on your resume, but they're in a different list. But for the most part, when you're first starting your career, you are bolstering your resume with all of the things that you can, all the experience that you have. Because if you send a blank page, you're not going to get an audition. You're just trying to communicate a bit about yourself and your experience to that casting team.
I've definitely found that with adding, when I was first starting out, when I would have a lot of amateur theater in my resume, one of the things that it gave me opportunities to do that I wouldn't necessarily have is I was exposed to parts and roles that in a professional capacity, there is no way at that age I should ever have played any of those roles ever. But because it was an amateur theater, it gave me an opportunity to flex a muscle that I didn't know how to do. And so at the very least, it gave me the experience that then when I walked into a professional environment, I was like, okay, I've worked out a bit. I understand what may go into this. And so, but yes, absolutely. I started to wean those off and then add more professional as I went along. And sometimes, yes, it would mean that I would have a shorter resume, but at the end of the day, I had a lot of experience behind me after that. And so I found it pretty valuable.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the feedback, guys.
Do we want to take another break now? And I would suggest in the break, let's think of some more things, and we'll come back to the playwright discussion and the play discussion too. So let's take 10 minutes.
I don't know how everyone's feeling, but we've got about a half an hour left in the session. Would everybody be okay if we took 5 minutes instead of 10?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, great. Let's do that then.
Okay, we'll see everybody at 2:35.
Okay.
And Heather, yes to your note.
Great. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, I'll just fire a note to Landon.
I shall watch for it.
We're just talking about we won't do breakout rooms because the group, like I think that we've got a small enough group.
I figured that might be the case because I was like, there's 8 people. So if we were to separating it, it would be 2 breakout rooms.
Yeah. Okay. 5 minutes?
Yeah.
See you in a minute.
Go say Heather. Carmen, I realized we were on break, but also it's this Landon. To answer a little bit more to your question as well, if you are interested in the OnCue newsletter, if you go to our homepage, you can sign up at the bottom of the page. And we try to post any community opportunities that are brought to us on there, not just ones with us. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I guess because I'd love to, just have a chance to explore more opportunities, but I also also work full time.
Yeah.
And I have, you know, I have a 13-year-old in school who also is interested in theater, but I mean, again, she's in school. So I guess I don't know how that works with opportunities for people who are interested in theater, but would like, you know, and would like the opportunities to try things and could maybe, you know, there's maybe some flexibility, but how do you make that? I guess there are any ways to. Yeah, I'm interested in the what the Regina Little Theater opportunity. That sounds intriguing. And Mary messaged me about some opportunity with play reading that which could be really cool. But yeah, I'd like the chance to try a few things, but I haven't.
May I make a suggestion, Carmen?
Of course, thank you.
If you ever have the opportunities, whether it's like Globe or Regina Little Theater, what have you, they have different like socials after certain shows. And like, for instance, with RLT, you'll have like the green room night, which is like the Friday of every main stage play. And you could mingle with all of the actors, the directors, the people involved, the board, you know, and just the general audience. And you know, you get to really make some great contacts that way. And then they actually remember your face. They're like, oh yeah, I remember you from you've been around for a while. Yeah, glad to see you, you know, when you come out for an audition. So
yeah, okay. Are you're involved with Regina Little Theater with Pamela, or are you?
Yes, that's where I started originally.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and we like one of the things that On Cue has is we operate the community calendar. So like LT will send in their calendar for the year, and we just go in and we enter all of their performance dates and their production dates and like their AGM and stuff. So on our website as well, if you go to like what's on and then community, I think what it says under there, that calendar will show everything that's been submitted to us. Yeah, whether it be RLT or Sterling or Globe or anyone.
Okay. So aside from Regina Little Theater, are there? I mean, just there's are there like? I mean, do you basically have to be able to rehearse all day? Is that in order to do it?
No. RLT, I don't believe rehearses in like before.
RLT just evenings. On occasion, they might set up a weekend, but it's usually evenings. And same with Regina Lyric and Regina Summer Stage. They're both the same thing. Regina Summer Stage just does musicals. So
Sterling also only does evenings.
Right.
Yeah, it's just Sterling.
On Cue
That's
is
the big difference really between those community groups and professional theaters is that, right? Like at Persephone, we rehearse all full days, Tuesday to Saturday. Full day rehearsals with 2 days off a week, and then performances are 6 days a week. So to do that, you really do have to kind of do this, right? And not something else, which does make it hard.
Right.
And On Cue is slightly different because all the projects that we produce are like artist-led projects. So it's an artist who's proposed a project to us and we're helping them produce their show. They can rehearse on whatever schedule they want. And then we just help them, like we get the space and we help them with publicity and admin and grant writing and stuff. And then host the shows basically for them.
Okay.
Are we back?
We are back. Yes, it is 2:36.
Okay. Let's dive in again.
Yeah.
Let's talk about scripts.
That's a big question, as Jennifer said. I can speak on behalf of Persephone. Persephone takes unsolicited scripts, and that we are one of the few organizations I think left in Canada that do that. Right? Often you have to be invited to submit your script. Here you can just send it. I will read it. We don't have a dedicated literary manager, so those submissions come to me directly, and then I read them, or I work with artistic associates. We have 2 artistic associates to get them read. Like full transparency, when I started here, I got an overwhelming the number of script submissions. I had a couple playwrights send me like, 6, 7, 8, 9 of their scripts all in one go. So there is a big backlog right now for me in the reading department, because it's also only part of my job. I am determined this year to get on top of it. So right now the response time is slow, and but I do follow up when I can, when I get to read something, and particularly if it's something that I'm feeling really excited about. I do respond to those folks. We don't necessarily give feedback, and that's just, again, it's just time, to give thoughtful critique on someone's play that they've invested so much in. It takes a lot of time, and because we take unsolicited scripts, we choose to take unsolicited scripts rather than giving people feedback on all of their work.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I would say we are so in flux right now, and I think my soul is in flux around new plays and plays. So that means that I'm married to a playwright. I'm hardwired to support the playwright, to honor the playwright, and often I think lots of times I miss the boat. I grew up and started in the time of Urja Karita, the artistic director of Tarragon Theatre, who wrote long, beautiful, extraordinary, debatable responses to people's scripts. But playwrights generally spoke to, and Kelly Jo can speak to this, that he at least responded to it, and there was something that acknowledged it. So I know it's really important for me that plays be Canadian plays be put on, Canadian playwrights be put on and be part of our programming, and you can see that even just in the last 2 years of the work that we've done. I am trying to read all the scripts. I want to, and Landon and I worked on this, is how to respond to scripts, the reason I want to read all the scripts and then I want to figure out how to communicate what I've read to the world is I'd like audiences to start wanting playwrights, that we want playwrights, that audiences want playwrights, that we build an appetite, we rekindle that idea of the Canadian playwright has something to tell us about who we are. So how we do that, there's a 1,000 ways on doing that, but I think one way is if I can start reading those plays, this is what I'm thinking about right now, so this is my full transparency, is how to promote Canadian plays, how to and serve the Canadian playwright. So how can we best serve them? What does that look like? How do we reconcile that with commissions? What does a commission look like? Should we commission? How to keep people out of the workshop? Anyway, these are all on my mind. The workshop loop, thank you. The workshop loop. Like, I was also part of the time when, like, Sean Dixon had 27 workshops of his plays and no one put them on. So all that to say, it's in flux, but it's very important to me.
I will also testify that Jennifer has been talking about this for at least 1.5 years.
No, and I got to get off my butt because, like, really,
I was saying, like, I know a few months, like, you and I'll connect, and then I'll like, here's a new idea for people to submit the plays. I don't know if this helps your end, but here's a new idea.
So I'm reading them all, but I haven't got back to anybody. It doesn't help anyone to not know that they don't know that I've read their play, but so it's right now like that loop. But I hope and intend that it's one of the 3 things our company does. It's in our mission, and I'd like to make sure those 3 things live fully. So that's a really long.
I also just wanted to add to what Jennifer has said, to say, like, it is not too much to email, like, to just, you submit your script and 6 months goes by and you haven't heard anything. It's okay to email and say, like, hey, have you read my script yet? And I recently responded to a playwright who was emailing me, had emailed me a couple of times, like every 6 months they kind of show up in my inbox. And I finally read their script and was able to respond to them and say, I read it. I love it. I think it's great. it is totally the kind of thing I would program. When I don't know,
That's another.
but at least the feedback to know, like, okay, this is a thing that is like, yes, is this our pocket? And this is a thing I'd be excited to put on stage here. Yes. You know, and there are so many factors into timing around that kind of stuff. And the other comment I wanted to make was around commissions, because Jennifer, you brought up commissions. Commissions can be more difficult. And one of the things that I think about around commissions right now is ensuring that I'm not commissioning work that I can't commit to, because the development process can be long. It can take years. It takes money to keep a show in development and really commit to ensuring it can be successful in its creation phase. And so when I talk to people about commissions, it is really about making sure that I have the money to back it up for the long term, and not just say, here's $5,000 or $15,000 or whatever the commissioning fee is going to be. And then when you're like, okay, my play's ready to be workshopped, I'm like, I don't have any money to do that, but that's great. Because that sucks, right? That doesn't have any, that if we're going to commission work, we should be committed to its success.
Kelly Jo, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really helpful as a playwright to have seen the slush pile. I got my job at CBC. I became a producer because I was hired to clear somebody else's slush pile. Because
describe what the slush pile is, Kelly Jo.
Slush pile is the submissions that you've received to produce. At CBC, on the literary end of CBC, we would receive short stories, poetry, but also a number of plays that people thought would work as radio plays. None of them did, by the way. So I would read 300 pages a week to go through the slush pile. I would get hired for a 3 or 4 week period by my then producer just to read and go, because there was like 5% of the slush pile that had any sort of, particularly in the drama part, there would only be like 5% where you could go, yeah, I can see this working in this media. And then about half of the stuff in short story and poetry, maybe kind of sort of. And then you put the stuff in front of the person that can actually take things to the point of production and commit to time and money and stuff like that, and say, you only need to read these, because it's an incredible ask of someone who's trying to produce a season, whether it's on the air or on the stage, to also give your mind and attention and response to 300 pages of art that people have poured their life into a week.
Yep.
And I did write responses for everybody, because I wasn't at that point the producer, and I had that the number of spoons that required. But I wanted to say, in terms of getting a play into the mind of people that actually want to commit and produce and move, that it's really helpful to have something other than the slush pile as a mode of delivery. Most of the main stage productions, or at least D stage productions I have gotten, a lot of them came out of relationships I had with ADs, but also I got one main stage by doing a house concert staged reading of a script and inviting the AD. So there was cheese and crackers and wine as opposed to a slush pile. And that's always nice. 2 plays I got because I won prizes. I submitted to competitions in Toronto, and I got Nightwood Theatre in Toronto because I won the groundswell competition and was brought in and developed that way. 2 other plays got done places where I never thought I would have a play done because they were published. And once you have a book, books travel further. I had a play in New York and Washington because my book was in the Library of Congress. It's
Yeah.
just like, there was just like, and it, some literary manager went and did a search for a particular subject area, found my book, and I ended up getting a production. So having other ways to draw attention to the work
Yeah,
is
agreed.
incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. There was a discussion on playwright Vern Thiessen's Facebook page the other day, and he had sent out scripts, like he sent them out in the mail, and you know, he sent out 50 scripts, and it probably cost him, you know, $500 to do that. And 2 artistic directors wrote back. Arthur, my husband, who was the artistic director of Great Canadian Theatre Company back in the day, added to that list and said he read all the scripts. He wanted to be Urjo Carita, and he never produced a single script from that pile. So I think that's pretty much the reality, is that it comes through watching a fringe show. Also, for me, I sort of feel like it sort of gets into commissions a little bit too, but I feel like there are playwright centers across the country that I need to pay better attention to. They're already doing a bunch of that work. Paying attention to the fringe shows that are coming up, going to see the work that On Cue is doing here in Regina. Like, the thing I like about reading the plays is I start to get to know who's writing what and what the subjects are. But again, the process of being in a rehearsal room and getting your play produced and negotiating with actors and the directors and the designers needs some muscle. And the short rehearsal times that we have and the amount of investment we go in really is a big act of trust and a lot of muscle to get over that finish line to opening. And so working with people with experience, with writers with experience, we already know we're going to get somewhere. Or like, you put teams together. I did 2 shows last year one show last year, 2 shows this year that were new plays. 3 shows. And so it was really putting the team together. So for example, number 34, we gave ourselves a 6-month, Munish had to write in 6 months. He knew it wasn't going to be a Pulitzer Prize winner. And it was, in our own way and in our hearts. But we created a different approach that Munish was on board with, the writer was on board with, that he and Judy were really creating that with the designers. And that became part of the creative process. That's just a different way of doing it, of course. But yeah. Oh, but Munish, that happened because he was from Regina, and we met, and I said, tell me your plays, because we love politics and we loved comedy as a way to get to it. And I said, send me your plays. And I liked his plays, and I loved Mrs. Singing Me. And so when this idea of doing a play about George Reed came up, I went, hey, Munish, and what do you know about football? And he's like, I bleed green. So that did happen because of that sequence of events. 250, Jennifer.
Yeah, I'd add on to what Jennifer's just said to say, like, you know, sometimes a playwright will email me and say, hi, here's who I am. Here's what I need right now. I have this play that needs a workshop. I need 3 days to do this. I'm looking for somebody to commission this piece, this idea that I have. Like, they just show up in my inbox with a list of things. And sometimes, like, the list is like not stuff I can do, but it really helps me understand where they're at, what they're looking for from me. And this is true, I think, of every discipline. For me, in my style as an artistic director, it helps me to understand what your needs are, what you're looking to have fulfilled, what you need to be able to work to the next step. Like, this is true of the staff here too. Like, when we hire new staff in interviews, I tell people, like, what do you want to do with your life? Like, don't tell me about why you need this job. I mean, that's important too, but how does this job help you on your path? And so as an artistic director, I'm looking to help people on their path. And so that list of needs and being able to really articulate what it is that you're looking for and how the person you're talking to can be useful to you is, I think, really beneficial. And then the other thing I want to say is that, you know, when you send your play, and this can be hard, I understand, like, as a writer myself, it's really vulnerable to share your work with people, and know that is, if you don't get an enthusiastic response, it is an artistic sensibility, right? Like, this, I'm very keenly aware that this person I emailed to say, hey, I love your play. Another artistic director might vehemently disagree with me. If somebody else was running this theater right now from an artistic lens, like they might be like, no, that's not a good fit. And so that aspect of the conversation is like to understand that the artistic leadership person that you're talking to at any organization, they're temporary. They're not going to have that job forever. And just because they don't think your play is a good fit for that organization doesn't mean that the next person who gets that job, who's looking through a different lens, who has different goals, isn't going to be, is going to have the same opinion. Like, you know, a lot of the stuff that I'm carrying right now in terms of curation has to do with getting us out of the pandemic, getting us into like a future moving visionary place rather than a survival place. Because we've been in the survival place like most theater organizations or any performing arts organization for the last few years. And that transitional point that we're in right now is really important. And the curation comes with a lot of that in mind, as does a lot of the, you know, just my identity as a person. Jennifer, we've talked about this before too, right? That, you know, we are shaped by the artistic experiences that we've had. And as somebody who wears many hats myself and has had a lot of negative experiences in the industry, it shapes how I do this job. I want to be able to provide people with opportunities. I want to help people on their path. I want to, you know, open the door for someone who's been banging on it for a long time. All of those things, because those are experiences that were really hard for me in my early career. And now I'm in this position, I get to be able to be that person for other people. And that's really exciting to me. But not everybody who has a job like this feels that way. So know that when you're pitching your plays or you're pitching yourself, you know, as an artist, that the person that you're talking to has to be on your wavelength in that way in order to say yes. So if the answer is no, it's not necessarily because you're a bad person or you're a bad artist or that your time is not now or whatever. It's just not, it's like dating, you know, you're not a good fit. And that's cool because these jobs are temporary.
That's what I mean about the feedback loops. They're dodgy. I see that we've got thank you, Heather. So articulate. I love that. We got 5 minutes left. Leon, you had your hand up. Did anyone else? Louise, I did see your question about co-productions. So how about we go to Leon and then we can.
Sure. I was just going to say, you know, I've one of the things that has really helped me in my career is, as you were suggesting and stating, Jennifer, is to get to know the playwrights. That was the first thing that I noticed when I first came to Saskatchewan. That was the first thing I did. Actually, the first playwright that I met was Ken Mitchell, because I was in Moose Jaw and he was doing a Robbie Burns night or something. It was really wild. Anyway, I went and I introduced myself and I said, hi, you know, I can't believe I'm actually meeting you. And, you know, after my little fan, whatever was over, I just asked him questions about what it was to be a playwright and come from this place. Cause I was from the West Coast. And so the playwrights that I knew from the West Coast had a very West Coast vibe to their writing and their experience. And it was so valuable. And so I would ask him, you know, I would ask lots of different people what it was like to be a playwright in Saskatchewan, and do you get commissioned or do you get, and they would say this, basically a lot of the things that's being said right now. They would say, well, yeah, what I do is I send in my scripts and hope the artistic director's going to read it. And then I start bugging them to read it again, or, you know, hey, listen, I've got this amateur, you know, version of my play coming up. How can I invite you to this? That it'll give you a sample of what the work is, and it'll give you a sample of, you know, I don't know, the kind of writing that I'm doing. And
so Got 1 minute left.
That was
That's-
it. He
Yeah.
just said it was just really helpful. It was helpful to get his own writing out as many different places as he could. That was it.
Thank you. That's
Invite people to your stuff.
Yeah.
Invite people to your stuff.
Any final observations, roundtable? Louise, I didn't answer your question about co-pros. I love co-pros. Not easy. They're not
Co-pros.
easy.
It's a long conversation
That's
about
a-
co-pros. Yeah, that's hard to wrap up succinctly. It's a big
Yeah.
topic.
Great. Well, I'd be happy, Louise, to have coffee with you and talk about co-pros.
You have a question, Jane? I just saw you on mute as well.
Oh, I don't think it's anything that can be covered in a minute and a half, but one area that we didn't really talk about today was stage managers and directors, how that works to get the foot in the door too. I'm kind of I've been doing a little bit of stage management with a local community theater group, and it's something that I'd be interested in pursuing more professionally, and directing as well as an aspiration of mine. And so it's hard to know, because my background's acting, so it's hard to know how to start that conversation as well.
What city are you in,
The
Jane?
stage management one is pretty easy to answer, I think, right off the top. One, this is your time. There is the vacancy numbers are high, but
I think I'm scared
like,
to say that I can do it professionally when I've only done it
well,
amateurly.
you do have to go through the apprentice program in order to work at a house like Persephone or the Globe, because we're a packed organization. We can only work with equity stage managers.
Yes,
that's all we're allowed to do. So but like at Persephone, I don't know about the Globe, we have an apprentice program. So people come, they do their apprenticeship here, you get your equity card, and then you're a free bird and you can work for whomever you want. But you do need to earn those credits. So if that's something that you're in, I'm assuming you're based in Regina, because we have not met.
I'm based in Langenberg right now, which is
I don't even
nowhere
know where
and everywhere.
Fantastic.
It's along the
everyone,
Manitoba border, halfway between the two cities.
Beautiful.
Okay.
We got a hard 3 o'clock. We should honor that and respect that. People have a lot going on. Jane, reach out to Heather or myself, and we can forward you to our production people who
Sounds great.
in that conversation. That offer goes to the rest of this room. Our emails are there. I don't need to speak for my learned colleagues except to say thank you. And this is a room of learned colleagues. I'm so grateful for your time, that you shared your important time, vital time with us. It's great to see familiar faces and remind myself of the new faces that are here. So big heart, big affection, big respect. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Jennifer, for keeping us on track.
Yeah. I said before we let everyone go, if anyone else wants to just promote any of their stuff that's happening, once again, this is how the networking happens. Kelly Jo, thank you for already putting the Cursed in chat, which is at Dancing Sky Theater in Meacham on April 28th. Jennifer or Heather, do you have anything coming up that you want to promote?
Sir John
The Herd is running right now, and we've got our co-pro coming up.
Yeah, we got a co-pro coming up. We've got the Herd is in Persephone. Sir John A. Portrait of a Ojibwe Rebellion is coming up next week. Come, if you can't afford it, write me. We'll figure it out. It's funny, it's heartbreaking. So yeah, it's all happening in Saskatchewan. It's frickin' happening because of all these people and beyond.
And On Cue has 2 shows that are both running right now in rep at the Shoebox Theater at the Riddell Center. Stating there are pay what you will options for this show. There are matinee prices and there are general evening prices. And if you can't afford any of those, just let me know. You can contact us at admin and I can work it out with the artists. Thank you to everyone for coming. Thank you to Canadian Heritage for funding these professional development sessions. And thank you so much to Heather and Jennifer and Leon for leading us through this conversation today.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good Saturday.
Thank you.
Ciao for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.